understand you are a prolific coffee drinker. How many shots of espresso have you had so far today?
Let's see. Today, this will be 8.
Yeah. Impressive. Yeah. And for listeners, it's only 10 a.m., so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Access Ideas. This is Yana, and today I'm speaking with Mike McFall, co-CEO at Biggby Coffee and the author of the book, Grind, a guide to take your business from concept to cash flow. Mike, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Yana. It's great to be here.
Now, for listeners who've not yet had the pleasure of visiting Biggby Coffee, tell us more about the franchise and your evolving role there over the years.
Sure. We've been in business 27 years now, and we're a franchise company, and so that means we get to work with franchise owners day in and day out. We started with one store in East Lansing, and, we've been on a quest. Our quest is to sell one more cup of coffee today than we did yesterday. So that focus has led to a lot of growth for us. And, we're really maturing as a company and as a brand. Back in the day, I started as a barista, and I pretty much had every position within the company, over time, and have been in every role. Today, my role is quite different than it was at the beginning. And my role today is more about facilitation of the health and dynamic of our team, our relationship with our franchise owners, making sure that we're maintaining our culture, being around for, historical perspective and so on. Today, I don't have a real grind. I'm not in it every single day. In fact, I've been on sabbatical since May 15th. So I'm in the closing weeks of a 3-month sabbatical for my position at Biggby, which has been a pretty wild experience, So, we are maturing as a company. We have a really strong management team in place today that is handling the day-to-day. And that means that, I don't have to be involved in as much of that as I once was.
Yeah, that's significant because I don't think you've taken such a long sabbatical before. And this is after 26 years, if I'm correct, at the chain. And you have, I think, now over 300 locations across the Midwestern United States. Is that right?
Yeah. In fact, somebody asked me this weekend, and I couldn't answer exactly. And that's probably the first time in my career I haven't been able to say exactly how many stores we have. Because when I left, when I left in May, it was like 303. And we were opening, about 1.5 a week. We were on pace. So I've been gone now for 10 weeks. So I would guess it's in the range of 320, 315, 320 right now. But it's kind of a weird perspective to not know.
How has your sabbatical been? Have you had a chance to think about things you hadn't had a chance to consider before?
Not so much, right? It's been primarily focused on getting my second book wrapped up. I'm really excited about this project, and the book Grind was the first book in a 3-book series. And so, I have a commitment to have my first round of editing done with my editor by Friday of this week. So it's going to be a bit of a week here for me trying to get that done. But, I've been busy. It's not somehow in my mind, I had it sort of chalked up like it was going to be summer vacation. And it was. I got 4 kids too, so so there was no summer vacation. I've been busy. I've been real productive. Had a lot of different things going on. So, but I'm looking forward to getting back. I really am.
Nice, I bet. Well, we're going to focus more on Grind today because I think this is a book that stands out for me as having some very practical insights around entrepreneurship, starting your own business. One of the things that caught my eye from the beginning when I read the description is that 20% of companies fail in the first year, even though 1 million people start a small business annually, and almost 65% close within a decade. And those are pretty grim statistics. And what I liked about your book is that you lay it out very candidly. There's no aspirational language that conflates reality with dreams. It's very much, this is what it takes.
Such a nice way of saying that. Well, I have heard the one negative I've heard about the book is really the exact 180-degree way of saying what you just said, which is that I am almost encouraging people not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was never my intention. My intention was never to tell someone that they shouldn't or couldn't. It's always been about just taking a hard look at reality to make sure that you've got what you need around you and supporting you in order to help you be successful. That's really what the point of it all was.
Exactly. And you're not an academic. You're not coming at this from a theoretical perspective. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on why your journey has been so important. You mentioned starting out as a barista and actually occupying every single role there is in that a Biggby experience. Tell us a little bit more about why that journey informed where you came from and where you are today.
Well, I've always believed that to be effective in managing a business, you have to be very, very well versed in the details of that business. And so, having been able to and had the opportunity to be in just about every position. I mean, when I say just about every position, the only thing I haven't done is the actual bookkeeping. I managed the finances for 20 years, but I never actually did the data entry. So that's the only thing I haven't done. So when I say just about everything, that's what I mean. But for me, I really believe in the fact that in order to effectively manage a business, you need to understand it sort of at the most granular level. And we, in fact, had a clause in our franchise agreement that my group's trying to get me to agree to pull out right now, which I'm going to agree to because I have to with them. I mean, I need to support them in it. But that your first year of business, we wanted you to have an apron on and be on the floor working one of our 3 determined positions 6 hours every day. And then you had 2 to 3 hours a day to handle the administration. And we felt like having that perspective on the business for a franchise owner was critical. And I still believe it was one of the things that was able to get us to the degree of success and development that we've been able to get to at this point.
And I think this relates to what you talk about when it comes to the idea of due diligence. So due diligence isn't just spreadsheet numbers and abstract concepts. This is very much your sense that having hands-on experience helps you understand what it takes, people that work there. So tell us a little bit more about what it means to complete due diligence and how that relates to self-awareness as you describe it.
Well, this concept came to me because I did a whole bunch of work, like months and months worth of work. And Tasha Eurich is an author who wrote the book Insight. And so it dawned on me that we do all kinds of due diligence as entrepreneurs around the opening of a business, around the launch of a new business, learning about competition and the market and, consumer preferences and, whatever it might be. We're studying all kinds of different, but we leave out, in my opinion, the most important ingredient to the success of the business, which is doing due diligence on yourself, understanding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses, so that you can leverage your strengths and then support yourself in the areas that you need support in your weaknesses. And you can do that through having a partner that complements you. You can do that through strategic hires, hiring the right people to handle certain things for you. But the fact of the matter is nobody does that. I guess everybody assumes in a way that they're just going to be naturally good at being an entrepreneur. Well, no one has the full toolbox on being a successful entrepreneur. I don't care who you are, right? Everyone has weaknesses. Everybody has areas that they're not going to be that strong. And so that's really what chapter 1 of the book is about, is let's evaluate you. People underestimate how important you as the entrepreneur are to the success of the business. You don't just put a product out there and it sells itself, right? And that's the other major premise of the book is you better be ready to promote, you better be ready to sell, or you're gonna struggle. So,
yeah.
But I did do a 24 question quiz called the Grind Score.
Oh yes, I completed this one.
Did you? How'd you do?
I think I only got 7, so I'm probably not a strong candidate, but that's okay. I'm happy to cheer on from the sidelines anybody who's got the tenacity to be an entrepreneur.
Well, and again, the point of the feedback from that was not to say that a 9 is going to be better than a 7, but more about if you're a 9 or if you're an 8, what are the things, what are the areas that didn't make you a 10, and then really evaluating those and how that might get in your way in terms of being successful.
Yeah. Well, for me, I can answer that very honestly. It's the 24/7 aspect. So, one of the things you mentioned in your book is there's not going to be a vacation or a holiday period for many entrepreneurs. They might get a moment away, and surely your sabbatical is something unique in terms of all that you've done in the last more than 25 years, taking time away to devote to a book. But I want to step back to what you were talking about with self-awareness, because I think what you said around entrepreneurship and people believing that it just takes confidence or that they have what it takes, whatever that is a barrier. And the insidious aspect of ego is that it makes us confident that we are self-aware when perhaps we have a lot to learn. So can you talk a little bit about a time maybe where you became more self-aware after feeling, maybe I didn't judge that as well as I thought that situation?
Well, I think one of the most powerful moments in reading Tasha Urich's book, Insight, she makes the claim, and this is a woman who, is world renowned for her study in self-awareness. And she said, if you believe you're self-aware, you're not.
That's
and
the
that
first clue.
Took my it completely warped my entire world, that one line. And I think, what it comes down to is, self-awareness 101 is being able to run this filter where when something happens in the world that you have this filter that allows you to not react out of emotion or take a step back and think about, okay, what's a more appropriate response? And most people have that ability, I would say, right? Not all, but most. Mm-hmm. But then what really got me going with Tasha's work was she then makes the claim that self-awareness 2.0 is understanding your impact on others and understanding how when you engage with somebody, the impact you're having, and so that you can begin to have the impact that you want to have, right, with somebody. And to me, that was a huge sort of quantum leap forward in relation to my understanding of self-awareness. And it's really cool to think about that you can sit and with a bunch of work, because you don't know as a person, you don't know the impact you're having. And you have different impact on different people, right? So you might have a certain type of impact on one person and something very different kind of impact on another. And so beginning to have the conversations with the people in your life that are super important to you and so on about the impact that you have, and then being able to work with that is that just really powerful stuff.
Are there any conversations that stand out in your memory as aha moments where you realized, oops, I don't think I had the impact on that person that I was hoping for?
Yeah, I think there was an engagement I had probably about a decade ago where basically what came through was that I oftentimes come into a room or presenting myself in a certain way within a group or with people as quite arrogant, right? And that's the vibe that people are getting from me, and that I am sort of bored with their take, not that interested in their take. I kind of have it all figured out, right? And then I'm arrogant enough to think that I have it all figured out. And so, and that landed, that's not the easiest thing in the world to hear, right? So, it took me a bit on that one. And, I had some really strong people around me, one of which was my business partner, who were able to begin to point out the specific moments and behaviors when it was occurring, so that in the moment I could evaluate it. And, we got through it as a group, they helped me through it. And a lot of it had to do with a lack of patience. And then the other piece of that was boredom. And so I'm through it, right? I need to move on. I'm impatient. I'm bored with what's happening here right now. We need to get going. right? And how that manifested with people was I was arrogant. I came across as very condescending and arrogant, right? And so anyway, that was a moment that I was able to get some pretty significant feedback from people, a fair amount of awareness around it. I still struggle with it today. I do, and I still have moments when people point it out to me and so on. So if I come across as arrogant in the podcast, will you tell me?
Absolutely. So far, so good.
Okay, thanks.
You mentioned something that you still struggle with every day. And I think this is often the quality of our strengths is it's almost like they're turned up too loud or they become overbearing and then they become weaknesses. So how do you come back and practice what you gained insight from? Or do you have any hints or advice that you could recommend to our audience as far as skills?
Absolutely. To me, it's about bringing those around you into the conversation about what you're working on. And it's really difficult to do it on your own. In fact, I might even say it's impossible to do it on your own because these are things that are unconscious, right? That you're not aware that it's occurring. And so you need the people around you to bring that to you when it occurs. And so having the conversation with people about this is what's going on for me. This is what I'm working on. Could you please point out to me when I start to appear bored or when I start to appear when you're feeling like I'm coming across as arrogant in a room or whatever? Can you please bring that to me at that moment? And so to me, it's the best step forward is bringing those around you into that conversation and having them help you.
And having people who are willing to open up and tell you, and they're not too scared or intimidated to tell you. And that must be tricky if you're in a position of leadership.
That's real tricky, but that's just, it's just authenticity. And one of the greatest ways you can build a relationship with somebody, people get an inverse structure around how to build a relationship. People think that if I just help you, if I support you, if I do things for you, then we're going to build a relationship, the two of us. But one of the more powerful ways to build a relationship is to ask someone for help and bring them into your world in a genuine way. So by asking somebody to look out for certain behaviors or ask somebody to bring you information or just, simply ask them for a favor, that is a really powerful way to build a relationship too.
And that helps people see their impact, which is incredibly powerful to I'd say most people, they want to see that they make a difference.
Absolutely.
And so like you said, if you ask people for help, it gives them a perfect opportunity to bring their strengths to the situation.
And give them the background and then, that shouldn't, like if I sit down with somebody and I ask them for that level of help, I hope that takes any intimidation away, right? Or I would think it would take a lot of it away is I'm sitting down and asking you for help, right?
Yeah, you're not trying to hold your authority or position over them.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I want to pivot for a moment because obviously being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, customer relationships are everything. And being consistently committed to your business and its customers is what will yield the ultimate success. So tell me a little bit about how your attitude has evolved towards customer relations and how this shows up in Grind in your book. And you can even hint at your next book if you want. We'd love a teaser too.
Well, it's a big part of Grind. I think it's the third chapter. The whole third chapter is dedicated to this, and it's called Your First Crush is the concept. And my point is that if you, as the entrepreneur, the manager of the business, you need to engage the customer who gives you the opportunity in the same way, in the same sort of intensity level as you did your first crush in elementary school, right? and my point is like that when you had that first crush, right, and that person walked in the room, I mean, you were like fixated. Every glance, every word, whatever that person was doing was just, supremely powerful to you. And that's the level of attention and detail that we need to be paying to our customers at startup for sure. Because, sure, once the business is going and operating and you have revenue and you're generating cash flow and so on, the intensity level of that can diminish. But at the beginning, you're still figuring out what the heck the customer wants from you. You're not even
Mm-hmm.
sure what you're selling them. And so paying attention at just this incredibly intense way where you see what they like, what they don't like. I'll just give you an example. Early on in our business, we were a Italian style espresso shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Espresso bar. And so the left menu board was the cappuccino, the latte, the macchiato, the campana, the very traditional Italian drinks. And then the next board over was flavored lattes, right? So, the mocha mocha, the caramel marvel, the nutty buddy, the flavored lattes, the hazelnut, vanilla, and so on. Well, we realized pretty darn quickly that everybody's buying the flavored lattes. And so one of the things that we did quickly in our business, and I think it was one of the decisions that helped propel us, was we kind of scrapped the whole concept of even trying to be a, Italian affected Italian espresso bar. And we stopped worrying about macchiatos and campanas, and we said, we're just going to sell what we lovingly refer to as sweet bomb lattes, right? So the latte with the flavoring and the whipped cream.
Nice.
And it was being sort of laserly focused in on the consumer behavior and how they were interacting with our business. So many people that open coffee shops just missed that, and they stayed stuck on trying to be this, being something that the consumer didn't care about. The consumer didn't care if you made the perfect, macchiato. What they wanted is they wanted the sweet bomb latte, right? They wanted the caramel latte with extra whipped cream. And so that's an example. And so that incredible attention at the beginning to what the consumer wants from you. And the only way to get that is to be laser focused on them and asking them questions and engaging them as intimately as you possibly can.
And do you think that pivot came at the right time for you too?
Yeah, and it's such an important point because you don't know, as in a startup, and see, we're talking about startup here. In a startup, you don't know why they're coming to you yet, and that's a huge. I mean, I teach here at the university, and I have a co-teacher, and he and I talk about that all the time. Is like when you present your product to the market, you better pay attention because they're going to interact with that product in a very most likely in a very different way than you think they are. And if you are so stuck on your original idea that you can't ideate and create the product that they want, you're done. It's over.
Mm-hmm. And that comes back to what you're saying about ego. Because if you're so attached to your original idea and that you're convinced that this is the successful idea, you won't be curious enough to pick up on those clues and see what are the customers doing? What are they saying?
Yeah. Well, and the Mark Zuckerberg example is, he realized very early on in the development of Facebook that, it was supposed to just be a directory. I don't know if you've heard this story, right? But it was just supposed to be a directory.
Yeah.
And then he noticed that people were changing out the photographs on the directory on a very regular basis. And then he quickly realized that people wanted to share their photographs. They wanted to share their stories. And that's when Facebook went from being a directory to being what it is today, right? And so, had he not caught that moment and realized how the pace at which people were changing pictures, he would have missed the opportunity to turn this simple directory, which it was, into Facebook and what Facebook became.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great example. And I'm wondering too, do you feel that the qualities that would make somebody successful at a startup where they can respond and react to customer feedback are fundamentally different than those qualities that would make somebody successful at opening a franchise of well-established menu items and culture? How does that differentiate?
Well, that's a good question. I think I would sort of reframe it a little bit. I think do the qualities that make you successful as an entrepreneur hinder your ability to become a successful manager of a business? Because they're very different roles. And I think a franchise owner coming into a successful franchise kind of starts at that manager role, not necessarily as a true blue entrepreneur who's creating value in the marketplace by bringing new products to the marketplace, right? So, but yes, I mean, that's the whole premise of book 2 is that transition from bootstrapping entrepreneur where you are responsible for everything, every minute of every day, answering a billion questions, engaged in every decision, and then that arc from that all the way to where I am today, 26 years later, which is a little slow on the draw, but 26 years later, where basically the premise of the book is from bootstrapping to sustainability. And sustainability to me is me as the entrepreneur, I'm irrelevant to the business. And I could go away tomorrow and the business would continue to thrive. And so book 2 is that arc, right? So and it's an arc that most people can't make. It's why so few are able to take a business from startup, from concept, and take it all the way through to sustainability. Most people sell out, and I think most people sell out because they don't believe that they can take the business across that whole arc.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe they're not excited by the prospect of taking it to sustainability. Is that possible?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point because, entrepreneurs are oftentimes, I think ADHD is sort of a common thread in the entrepreneurs that I know. And so, to be able to go from bootstrapping entrepreneur where ADHD is like a sought quality, right? To, in my role today, like ADHD just doesn't work. I mean, we're constantly mitigating that from my partner and I.
Yeah. Well, thinking about what you said about the manager role, one of the things that comes up in your book, as well as your other interviews that I've listened to, is this phrase we hear people throw away, like, people are so hard to work with, or it's really hard to get good help. And you talk a lot about the importance of good management and that people are mostly great, actually, and most people have strengths you can work with, but it's the manager that's the key to making those teams work together. Can you talk a little bit about that idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm really passionate about. And the reason I'm passionate about it is, if you ask seasoned business managers what their biggest struggle in business is, 99 out of 100 times, they're going to say people. Finding good people. My premise is you don't find good people. That's such a just a misnomer, finding good people. I think everyone is a good person. And what we as managers need to do is we need to create environments that allow people to thrive within and then support them in doing so. And so that's the big switch in mentality is you're not out there looking for a superstar employee who's going to come in and help you run your business. What you need to do as a manager is create a place that people can come into and are supported. It's a nurturing environment where they can grow, where they can develop into the type of employee that they want to be and that you want them to be. And so it starts with management first in terms of building that environment. It doesn't start with finding the right employee. And so that's the big switch, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but I'd love to hear if you have any stories about maybe an employee who initially was thought to be less than motivated or not a great fit, or a franchise owner. I think you've talked a little bit about somebody who bought a franchise for their daughter and you really didn't think that would work out. Tell me a little bit about that and understanding what's going to work and maybe taking a chance.
Well, I think one of the greatest compliments that I hear, and I used to love, I don't get to be involved in it at this stage so much anymore, but so many people work for us and come into our world as shy, lacking confidence, but then we expect them, and through our training programs and supporting them, we expect them to engage. Mm-hmm. And taking somebody and watching them sort of grow and blossom from a shy person lacking confidence to this just incredibly confident, beautiful person who when a customer walks in, they're just like, "Wah!" and they just like, engage them and it's, to see that is a really, really great. And then we get feedback all the time that it changes people's lives. It changes our employees' lives to go from, and when you think about who we get to interact with when we're a barista in a coffee shop. I mean, I used to interact, I didn't know it at the time, but I used to interact with Lou Ann Simon, who was the president of Michigan State University.
Wow.
She wasn't the president at that time. She came in every single day. She got an iced tea with an extra slice of lime, or a lemon, sorry. And she would stand there and she would talk to me for 3 to 5 minutes. She was really cool, And then she'd go over, and then I don't know when it was, but when she got appointed to be president, it was a front page article in the paper. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like that's her. So like like as a barista, that gives you confidence, right? Like you're talking to somebody, you're having fun with them, and then you find out it's a professor at the university or an orthopedic surgeon or, a star athlete or whatever. And like all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, like people are just people, like they're fun. And so watching that transition with our baristas is a really fulfilling part of it. And most of them start out timid, but then it's our responsibility to help them sort of unfold.
And do you think that's part of what drove you to the coffee business and attracted you, that opportunity to have much more regular interactions with customers versus a restaurant, which maybe people don't go to every day?
Well, I loved it, and so, it was just so much fun to be in the stores in the morning. And so I think so. I never really understood the concept of hospitality. Danny Meyer wrote a book called Setting the Table, and it's all about hospitality, sort of as a lifestyle almost, and he did Shake Shack. He did a bunch of really high-end restaurants in Manhattan. The guy's a legend, right? Danny Meyer. And so when I read his book, I realized that like hospitality, I love it. I love treating somebody in a way that makes them feel good about themselves, their day, what's going on for them. Like, yeah, so I've thrived in that environment. And to me, it was something that I didn't know about myself until I got into it and started doing it,
Yeah, absolutely. And the success of Biggby during COVID speaks a lot to the hospitality of the culture there. And I think one of the things I'd love to have your perspective on is, how do you think hospitality will evolve with a customer base that's increasingly looking to buy online or virtually? How can that adapt? Because I agree with you. I think people love the hospitality experience. I think it changes their lives. And I genuinely think it is a way of life, actually. Even if your job title isn't hospitality per se, I think it can fit into almost everybody's life. I'd love to hear more what you think about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, or great conversation starter there, because I worry about how the world is going to look when these kinds of interactions, may have gone by the wayside. And I actually don't think they will. And maybe this is just my own bias for my own business and my own industry. But I think that they need interaction. You can't sit in your house on Zoom calls, 24/7. You just can't, and so to get out into the world and to talk to people and, just engage, I think our industry is set up nicely for that, right? Just to go out and grab a cup of coffee, meet somebody for a cup of coffee and have a meeting face to face or whatever it might be. So the hospitality side of it, to me, it's really about being, what's the word I want? About being a warm, sort of genuine, caring person, and I think that those that are great at, the restaurant business or just, generally in hospitality, that's how they feel about it. It's like having somebody into your house. If somebody comes for dinner at your house, how do you want to treat them? And that's what they want to do with their businesses. And the great ones, it's amazing what they can pull off.
And it feels good, right? I think that's what's so cool about it, is that it's not the aspect of the job that feels like a job. It feels fun. It feels engaging. It feels like it fires you up.
Yeah, I just heard a story this weekend, and we hear these all the time in our business. This couple, a friend of mine's niece, went on their first date at Biggby, and they're married now.
Nice.
Right? So
that's amazing.
Yeah, we have so many of those. A lot of people meet in line, or they study at Biggby and they're there, on a regular basis with somebody else, and they finally start talking, and then they start dating, and then they get married and have kids, and and so like that is such a beautiful part of our little world.
Oh, that's amazing. And what's next for you when you're thinking about your next book? Are you able to tease out a little bit, a few details maybe?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think the book will come out, I hope, this spring and this coming spring. So we're in the midst of editing. But what's next for me is to fully make this transition at Biggby, which is that the leadership team is built and functioning. And then my quest coming back into the company in August is going to be to set up a formal board of directors that will interact with the management team. So the management team is running the business day to day, reporting to the board of directors. Today, the board of directors is my business partner and I, right? So we each own 50% of the company, and so therefore we ultimately make all the decisions together, the two of us. But what we want is we want to transition from that mentality to a mentality of a management team interacting with a sophisticated, real board of directors, and then at some point, relatively quickly, like next 3 to 5 years, my partner and I do become somewhat irrelevant then. That's the ideal, right? And so we get to still be involved in the things that we want to be involved in. We get to take on projects. We get to assist however the board and or management team wants us to assist. And so that's a big part of what's next for me professionally at Biggby, is helping make that transition. My book is my third book. So the second book is written in the editing process. The final book in the series is a book called Grace. So the first one was Grind. The second book is Grow. The third book is Grace. And Grace is going to be basically a statement to the world that, now that we have these, if you've been able to transition to a sustainable enterprise, now what? And it's the now what that I think is really an important question that we all need to be asking ourselves. And I think that private enterprise and those that manage private enterprise, I believe it's the most powerful force on the planet. And I think we can transition the traditional mindset that private enterprise is negative, and that we can transition private enterprise to a really positive force, the most positive, powerful force on the planet for change, to help improve the human condition. And I think that that's what book 3 is going to be. And I've got a rough outline on that one. That's all. But that's the project. So that's my next 5 years is that right there. And then raising my kids. I got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I got a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 5-year-old, 2-year-old. So my next 5 years is to get, move them in a healthy direction.
Lots to occupy your time and energy. Sounds like a good mix.
Yeah, no doubt.
I love your down-to-earth ideas and based in experience. It's all based in real experience, and that's so refreshing. And at the same time, the fact that you teach is wonderful. And do you have plans to keep teaching?
Oh, yeah. I love the teaching, and I want to stay with that for a long time. It's the most inspiring thing that I do. When I go into the classroom, I leave and I'm really inspired by the students, and I leave with a strong dose of confidence and sort of faith in the future, because they're incredible. I mean, these students are incredible. And so, I love teaching, and as long as I co-teach with another guy and as long as he'll keep having me, then I'd love to keep doing it.
Oh, that's amazing. Is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to mention or add on?
That was great. I don't have anything. The only thing that I typically will get into in a grind interview that we didn't is the importance of selling. But that almost seems trite in this conversation. Like, this conversation seemed to be sort of beyond that, right? Like talking about people and talking about the importance of self-awareness and so on. So I don't think we need to go back on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do think sometimes people misunderstand the idea of sales, because I think it actually goes back to hospitality. I think if more people use the word hospitality instead of sales, they might go further with or developing their own skills. Because I know for me growing up, I had a lot of negative perceptions about sales. And it was only when I started thinking about it differently, like you're serving somebody, you're getting to know somebody, you're engaging with somebody. And I stopped thinking about it as I'm trying to get money out of somebody, I'm trying to sell.
Right.
And so I actually really thought what you said about hospitality is very practical. And you're not using the word sales, but that is fundamental to good sales skills, I think.
Absolutely. When you're selling, in my opinion, what you're doing is you're bringing value. The product you're offering is bringing value. And if somebody doesn't see that value, fine, right? But you're bringing value to them. They're paying for a service that they want, right? And you're solving a problem for them in the world that they need solved. So, to me, that's hospitality, right? And then the other thing about sales that I think people don't realize is the importance of just truly building a relationship with somebody. And then you're like you said, you're not selling to them, right? You're understanding them. And then if it's not a fit for them, if your product's not a fit for them, then we shake hands, we move on, and there's no, and so like I was the primary salesman in our organization for 20 years selling franchises, right? And that was my primary role. And I wasn't really selling. I was qualifying. I was making sure it was a good fit for them because I didn't want to get people involved that it wouldn't work for, and I didn't want to be 10 years down the road having it be a miserable mess, and so it was all about qualifying people and making sure it was a good fit. And when it was a good fit and they were interested in moving forward, then we would do a deal.
Now, that's one of the things I love about your style overall, this theme of saving people time, tell them the truth. Tell people the truth about what it takes, whether it's being into sales, whether it's being a good manager, whether it's having that really intense schedule. It's refreshing because there's a real cult of entrepreneurship and business culture. And that's fine. I mean, it's very glamorous on the surface, but I think what you convey so eloquently and succinctly is the reality is it takes very specific skills and tenacity and stick to it. It's fantastic.
Well, and we didn't talk about it, but it's a mantra of mine that if you aren't committed to making this your full-time, almost obsession for 3 to 5 to 7 years, don't get started. Just don't get started. I mean, we were 10 years in before we made any money, any kind of a living. And 10 years is a long time. It's been nice for 15 and 16 years now that we have been making a living at it, right? But boy, it was 10 years of just sweating it. And people underestimate how long it takes to build something, and they expect results in year one. When somebody asks me, when a new franchisee, a prospective franchisee asks me how much money they're going to make in year one, it's like big red flag, like I'm out. Because they're thinking about it from the wrong perspective, like you aren't going to be cash flowing in year one. Like you're going to be funding this thing. You're going to be building it for the first 2 to 3 years, right? And then it'll start to get traction. And then years 5 through 10, you'll start to see some return on that. But boy, that quick turn, that quick fix, that quick, return on investment mentality is just, to me, it makes it tough.
That's a good red flag, though, because you can instantly, pull people into reality and say, "Hey, that's just not going to happen."
Not going to happen. I mean, it could.
Yeah.
But we're not planning on it.
Yeah, it would be the exception rather than the rule.
Right.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on dealing with competitors? Do you have in the book? I think you talk a little bit about just focusing on what your strengths are, and the rest will follow. And don't get too caught up in the game of trying to beat your competitors at what they're good at.
Yeah, and it's counter to the standard thinking around entrepreneurship and business management. I don't really care what Starbucks is doing. I don't really care what Dunkin' Donuts is doing so much, or Tim Hortons. I mean, you pay attention at a cursory level, right? But to me, it's really about, and we talked about it. It's about listening to your customers. And what are your customers wanting from you? What are they buying from you? What is their feedback? To me, the customer's feedback is really the only thing that you should be hyper focused on. And so, people get so wrapped up in paying attention to what everybody else is doing. And it was interesting. On my social media, I had a post where I talked about, I wear a lobster butter hat, which is a company here in Ann Arbor called Ruse Roast. They do a lobster butter coffee. So I was wearing a lobster butter hat, and I was in a store, and they're like, "Aren't you the CEO of Biggby?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." "What are you doing wearing a Ruse Roast hat? Aren't they your competition?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, they're my competition, but they're awesome." Right? Like, they're amazing people. They have an amazing company. Their product's incredible. Like, why wouldn't I support them? Right? I love those guys. I love what they're doing. So I videoed that, right? And then I put that up. And that, I think to date, I think that's my highest traction I've ever gotten on a post, was sort of this like loving perspective on my competition. and being really okay and cool with the fact that I'm saying that these guys are amazing, which they are, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I didn't think they were amazing, I wouldn't say it, right? But I talk all the time about how Starbucks is an unbelievable company and how powerful they are and what amazing things they've done out in the world. And Starbucks is incredible, Now, do I like competing with them? No, because they're really good at what they do, but they're an incredible company, right? And like if we can't acknowledge that they're an incredible company, like that's silly, right? Like they're amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to following Biggby and checking out your next book. I find your ideas, like I said, very accessible. I hope you'll be on more podcasts because I did a search and I was trying to listen to everything that you'd been on, and you might feel like you're repeating yourself a little bit, but I found it really compelling. Just listening to some of the times the way you were reframing ideas or applying it to different situations. Even as somebody who is not an entrepreneur, I have the podcast, but I work in a very large company during the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So many of the concepts you talk about to me still resonate as important to good relationships in the workplace and a strong employee engagement, great employee culture.
Well, thank you. And I hope when the next book comes out, I think it'll be an interesting conversation because it goes more into that type of thing, which I'm actually more passionate about than I am entrepreneurialism, because it's about companies and organizations supporting people as human beings, nurturing them in developing a life that they love, and that we as leaders of organizations have an obligation to do that. And that we need to be doing it, and I love that conversation. That's a beautiful conversation to be having.
That's awesome. Well, I hope everyone checks out Mike's book. I'm going to promote that in the show notes as well. And you can actually take the grind test for yourself and get your own grind score and figure out how you stack up in the entrepreneurial qualities.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. It's been a real pleasure having you.
Great to be here. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
If you love Access Ideas, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on Podchaser via the link in our show notes, or wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. Tell your friends about the podcast too. Until next time, thanks for listening to Access Ideas.